Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, June 17th. Great to have you along. We are talking politics as the summer heats up. We knew a couple of the names that would be on the mayoral ballot in Akron, but who are these other people? We'll also hear from State Senator Frank LaRose talking about the state budget, what's in, what's out. And is Akron the perfect place for LeBron James to return to now that the NBA Finals are behind him? Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Akron's mayoral primary now less than 90 days away. We have a better idea which names will be on the ballot. We'll get to those right now. Glad to welcome Ed Esposito from WAKR to the discussion this week. And always great to have along Stephanie Warsmith from the Akron Beacon Journal. All right, Steph, you looked at these names. It only takes 50 names on a petition to get on the ballot. We've got some GOPs. We've got an extra Democrat that we didn't expect. Who's in the race?
Well, you obviously have Don Plisquellic and Mike Williams, which we knew about because they've already been campaigning now for a couple of months. But then on the Democrats, you have another person who's entered the race, and that's Janice Davis. And, you know, we've talked about, maybe some people don't remember, but she did run for Akron City Council against Marco Somerville back in 2009. She was part of a so-called reform slate of candidates that Joe Finley, former Akron councilman who had challenged the mayor before, put together. And so she has run before. She's never held office, though, and so she really is a political unknown, going up against two of the best-known names in Akron. And then on the Republican side, we already knew that Jennifer Hensel was running. She's a Medina attorney who also has never held office. And then we have another political unknown entering the race, and her name is Katie Marie Wilkins. I understand she may be a graduate student who also has never run for office before. So
we're guaranteed to have a woman on the ballot, at least on the GOP side, in the general election. Well, what do you make of some of these names, Ed?
You know, it's democracy is a wonderful thing, especially when the two big dogs in this race are obviously Plisquellic and Williams. This is a nice way to get your name out there. It's a nice way to get out there and see, you know, exactly what this process is like from the inside. As you said, the cost is getting 50 of your friends and family to sign a petition with your name and a couple of bucks, you know, to at least do the rudimentary. It's a name recognition builder. I think in some sense it's a good thing because it shows there's a little vitality. At least people think that the office is worth running for. So, you know, with the exception of, I think, just one race, you don't have an easy walk for incumbents. And it's a good thing for incumbents to have to explain what their mentality is and what their policies are and where they'd like to go. And to hold the challengers to the same standard. So, you know, in some sense, you know, I think these are people realistically that know they're probably not going to come out the other side in November as winners, but by the same token, at least they're interested in the process.
So where does it go from here? Do we expect hard campaigns out of these other three names that we weren't expecting when we've had this, you know, what we thought was going to be a two-person fight?
I think it's going to be interesting in August when things really start getting fired up and you got 30 days left before a primary, when you're looking at possibly debates, public forums, and stuff like that. You know, do you invite all five candidates? I think from our standpoint, from a broadcast standpoint, I think if you have one, you should have the others. They're on the ballot, so you know
it's worth saying though that they haven't officially gotten onto the ballot.
Right.
The elections board will have a meeting on the 27th to look over. They will have looked over all the petitions and will certify the ones who have enough signatures. So it could be that some of the mayoral and some of the city council candidates that we know right now are going to fall off, and that's probably likely.
But let's say, sake of argument, all of them are on there. So I think it's probably going to be incumbent upon the groups to put together debates and coverage to at least you know, make an effort to hear from these other candidates.
Well, the Akron Press Club is putting together a debate on the Democratic side for August that we knew would have Plisquellic, we knew would have Williams. Do you now put a seat there, assuming Janice Davis has enough signatures to get on? And in doing so, are you taking away a third of the time for someone who most say is not doesn't really stand a chance.
You know, according to that theory, the Minnesota Twins should just shut down the locker room and shouldn't play baseball again for the rest of the season, right? I'm asking you. You're the one that posted
I like that idea. We'll take some wins for the Indians.
You know, it's just In the NFL, it's any given Sunday. The democratic process is you go through a process to get on the ballot. If you're on the ballot, you're a candidate. Whether you got a chance in hell or not, the fact is, people could get disgusted with all the candidates on and still vote for you. You just don't know. This is why it's up to the people. It's not up to the pundits. It's not up to the people who put together the debates. I think if Janice Davis makes it on the ballot, she should be part of it.
Well, this is something that media organizations that normally put together the debates often struggle with, for example, third-party candidates. When should you include them on a panel with the major party candidates? In this case, of course, she is actually a Democratic candidate. But one of the things that I think will be interesting to see with this race is whether or not, having a third candidate in here, if you have a very close race between the two of them, could actually have an effect. So even if she doesn't have a chance to win, could she really have an impact on the outcome of the election?
And the Williams camp, the Plasquella camp, both trying to make media events out of filing this week. Did you guys cover those? What do you make out of something like that?
Oh yeah, we covered them.
Yes.
So did
we
Stephanie.
Were there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only place I think you found the coverage was on Akron and the Beacon Journal. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you have to do that. They're the major candidates.
Right, and I wasn't there when Janice Davis filed because I didn't know when she was going to be filing, or I would have been there for that. So, as a media organization, one of the things that we try to do is be as balanced and fair as we can. So if I went to one, I was going to go to the other. But I just think that it shows, the how much interest there is in these races, and the fact that this is really the most competitive mayoral race that we have seen in recent history. Although it is true that Joe Finley actually came within 1,000 votes of Plasquelic in the last mayoral election, although I think that was kind of a surprise, and I think that had a lot to do with people thinking that the mayor was safe and likely not coming out to vote.
When we move away from that election, we talk about someone else who's not really on the ballot, but is going to get some votes or not votes, and that's Alex Arshenkoff. You write this week that he would consider coming back to the Board of Elections. Right.
Brian Daley, who has been on the board for a few years now, was Alex's replacement when his seat was not renewed by the previous Secretary of State, Jennifer Brunner, is going to take a position with now the Republican Secretary of State, John Husted, as his regional liaison for Northeast Ohio. So this opens up a vacancy. When Husted got into office, there was a lot of speculation, is Alex going to get back on the board? Well, his answer was, there's not a vacancy, and now there is. So, when I called him about it this week, he said, I wouldn't turn it down. So I think that it seems to be a foregone conclusion that he's going to be returning to the board here.
If he wants to do it, he can. I mean, it's important, though, to look at the history of why Alex was booted off the board. And I mean, it was clearly, if you want to talk about venue shopping, Husted is much more friendly than Jennifer Brunner was. I think, I think it's fair to say that Brunner made her decision in the crucible of a lot of information and political wrangling among Democrats here, namely Wayne Jones, seeing that he had a shot at Alex and he took it and it worked. You don't have a friendly venue there anymore. It wouldn't be surprising to see Alex back on there. I think his health may have probably more to say about that than anything else.
Let's talk about the impact if that happens as we move the discussion now over to NewsNite.net.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at NewsNite.net.
State Senator Frank LaRose from the Akron area getting his first shot at the state budget. Earlier this week, he had a chance to sit down with Ed Esposito and Jody Miller.
Actually, it's a little frustrating that we worked on this budget for months and months, and there are a few really minor things that ended up getting more attention than I think they should. I mean, the front page of the paper, we're talking about the alcohol limit in beer. That was such a minor thing in the budget. Now, it's important, I guess, craft brew industry and all that, but that's not the main story. Neither is this abortion thing that ended up in the budget, which was a last-minute thing, and we all have our issues with that. The big picture is Jobs Ohio. which is about creating jobs. The big picture is the things that we're doing to streamline government and make it more efficient and less expensive so that we can keep taxes low, which is about creating jobs and growing jobs in Ohio. This whole thing is about making Ohio a place where businesses want to operate, where families can live and work and earn a living. These minor issues that get stuck in the budget get a lot of attention from people, but that's not the big picture. It's not the main story.
It's all about jobs. It always comes back to that for politicians. Let's get to the discussion. Great to welcome Phil Trexler now from the Akron Beacon-Journal. Stephanie will rejoin us here in a moment. Ed, you were part of this discussion. This is his first go-round with the budget. And a lot of topics he touched on as being key issues here.
Well, and the question, the response to the question was, Jody and I both wanted to talk to him about how it seems sometimes the General Assembly lawmakers lose focus of what the central issue we sent them down there for. We sent them down there to fix an $8 billion budget hole, which, you know, could be $8, could be $5 billion. Who knows what it is at this point. But the distractions of higher alcohol beer, attaching language regarding abortion and government funding in hospitals, which wouldn't even affect Summit County, by the way. You know, the whole thing about whether or not you can pack heat going into a bar. You know, how this all seems to, you know, just be kind of a circus down there in the General Assembly. I thought it was interesting. He told, you know, his take on this was they hadn't lost all the focus on this, but naturally, you know, when you do have these things come up, he was pretty frank, literally. He said he'd prefer not to see this. I mean, you know, because the question always comes. The question I probably hear more from voters more than anything else is, why can't they just go take care of this one item? Why can't they have an up or down vote on the budget without having all this other sturm and drang around it?
Lobbyists just don't let them do that. You know?
Lobbyists don't let them do it.
There's special interest down in Columbus.
Well, and we is special interest. We is lobbyists. I mean, you know, everyone's got a right to go down there and say, hey, you know, I wish you could do this. So, you know, there's all that around that. But I think overall, he thought, you know, that they did, you know, pay attention to the basics on it.
He brings it back to jobs. And again, you can watch the entire interview, I should tell you, over on NewsNite.net, so you can hear all of what State Senator Frank LaRose had to say. But, you know, Phil, it seems like politicians always come back to jobs, jobs, jobs. Those in power say we're creating jobs. Those who aren't in power are saying you're not. We're showing a deficit. Is it one of these numbers that's really hard to qualify?
Well, there's also a lot of, you know, if comes and what ifs too. You got to be careful too, because the Medicare issue is always out there. That's the huge, you know, white elephant in the room there.
And he makes that point. There's so much that they don't have control over.
Exactly, and that's a big thing. You know, we're talking about jobs. I mean, let's not forget the casino issue that the deal that he cut this week. He literally saved those racetracks, the 7 racetracks in Ohio. Those were going to be shuttered. There's no question about that. But putting slot machines in there is certainly going to save a lot of jobs, particularly in you know, at Northfield. In
in Thistledown,
yeah. All the parts, you know, they're going to benefit from that.
And explain what exactly has happened with this.
Well, you know, when Kasich came in the office, he didn't like the deal the state had cut with the 4 casinos in Ohio, so he, you know, basically shook them down for more money, but also too
shook them down. That's it.
But
that's an editorial standpoint.
Okay, but he did, and good for him. You know,
he held their feet.
$110 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
And in the process, he also too cut a deal where these racetracks will be able to put slot machines in there. And there's licensing video slot machines, and you know, basically that's what the track's been crying for. Now, the public never had a chance to vote on this issue.
Well, which they thought they had with Strickland.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, you know, then it pops up again.
So, I think it's a home run for Kasich to come through and say that you're going to have gambling, which you should have had 30 years ago if you're going to have it. But you know, saving the racetracks was important, I think, in the economic balance.
Well, and the argument the Republicans make on the state budget, you know, it kind of similar to what Kasich's making on this deal with the casinos, is that the decisions we're making on the state budget do have an impact on jobs because it impacts tax policy. It makes Ohio allegedly more development friendly, economic friendly for businesses to operate in or come to and think about expansion. Although I think there are some interesting studies that say tax policy isn't 100% of a business's reason. You know, certainly education and innovation. I think there was a study, I believe it was Case Western Reserve, but it may have been CSU, did within the past 3 or 4 years, where they talked about, you know, what do you do for an environment for job creation? So I think what you're hearing from the Republicans is we address some of these things with gradually with phasing out the estate tax, with keeping the cut in the state income tax, keeping that on track. So those are things that they say have an impact on job creation. But as Phil said, you don't know that until you see what's happening on it. And the economy is very complex. I mean, I don't know if, 5 years from now, I don't know if you're going to be able to go back and say, this is the reason why we have more jobs or why we saw job growth is because of what they did in June of 2011. Right. I don't know if you're going to be able to say that.
Go ahead. And Kasich, too, announced a proposal, too, this week in Columbus, whereas tax incentives for people who are investing in Ohio companies. And that's another, I think, innovative idea that he's come across. So much negative has been said about it, but the guy's not sitting down there in Columbus in his office looking at his 401k. He's out there. He's throwing around ideas. He's brokering deals. He's taking a lot of heat, of course, on Senate Bill 5. But the guy is at least down there, and he's not being quiet. He's working and trying to turn the state around.
What's interesting is looking at the editorials before the election in November. I think it's fast. I think Kasich is doing exactly what the plain dealer said that he needed to do, was basically just go in there and shake it up, throw everything he can against the wall and see what sticks. He's doing that.
He is doing it. He's working. Like I said, the Senate Bill 5, And
there's a lot of stuff people don't like. Senate Bill 5 is probably the single most polarizing thing to come out of, all of this bag of tricks that he's come in and looked at. And it may come back and bite him in a big way in November.
Yeah. But when we get back to the word jobs, which is what Frank LaRose was talking about in his interview, and we talk about measuring jobs, and those say we're losing jobs, those say we're gaining jobs, is there really a fundamental way to measure that? Because it just doesn't seem that the numbers that everybody throws around can be qualified.
As we're recording this segment in Kent, Ohio on a Friday morning, the Department of Jobs and Family Services is releasing the job numbers for last month. That's the metric you have. How many people are working and how many people aren't working. Period. Now you can bore into it even more, and how many are high-paying jobs, how many are lower-paying jobs. This is where you start to get into what the impact of collective bargaining, Senate Bill 5, overall just manufacturing economy versus service economy gets into a lot. But the metric is still how many people are working. How many people are applying for unemployment? How many people have seen their benefits run out?
Yeah. And creating jobs. We've created jobs, but if we've created service jobs that are low-paying jobs, have we really done a service to the community?
Yes, because if you don't have manufacturing jobs to create, what else are you going to create? This whole argument about you're not creating high-paying jobs. What are the communities that are creating high-paying jobs, and where are they? These are huge macroeconomic issues. I understand that, that you still want 24-hour, $24 an hour jobs, but I just look at the announcement in Canton here recently that there's a call center going into the old Kaufman's building in Canton Center, and it could employ up to 1,000 jobs. You might want to say, I'm going to turn my nose up at $10 to $15 an hour jobs. Hey, those are jobs. Those are still bringing in activity. And look at this announcement today, this week, over the federal government with their loan guarantee for a huge solar-powered business down in Ontario in Richland County that could create up to 1,000 jobs. How do you turn your nose up against that? You can't.
But Phil, you mentioned the governor giving tax breaks to help stimulate job growth, but at the same time we've got this huge tax hole. Doesn't he get some criticism for giving away tax dollars at a time when he's emphasizing the deficit?
Absolutely, he's going to get criticism for it. But I think he's on the mantra of investing in Ohio companies as a way to give them the resources available to create more jobs and to create a better economic climate in the state. So, absolutely, you're going to always have a critic in some fashion on any kind of tax break proposal that you give.
Sure, taxes be a topic down there. It'll continue to be a topic for us right here on NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
The NBA season is over, that much we expected, and many thought Akron's LeBron James would have his first ring. He doesn't. What's the big impact? Thanking Ed and welcoming Stephanie back to the panel. He doesn't get the ring. Many in the sports world didn't want him to get the ring, and now that he didn't get the ring, the sports kind of wears off, and you think, here's our Akron guy falling short on the national stage.
Yeah, he's turned into like the most scrutinized athlete ever. I mean, it's amazing. He has polarized this nation. Every columnist in the world is writing about him. He is under intense pressure. He had a horrible, horrible finals, obviously, and the comments that he made afterward came back to bite him. He, you know, I think you know, everyone's giving LeBron advice, and whether he takes it or not, I don't know. But you know, obviously, there's some parts of his game that need to be worked on, and parts of his psyche that need to be addressed. And I thought it was very interesting that Brian Windhorst, who you know, has covered LeBron for years, was actually recommending that LeBron see a sports psychologist to address some of the issues because of the great fall off that he had in the finals. The guy was, you know, averaged 27 points a game, and only during the regular season, and had the biggest drop off ever for a player in the finals, down to 18 points a game. So what happened there is amazing. It shows that maybe last year when he played for the Cavs against Boston, maybe he didn't quit. Maybe this was just, you know, a sign of things to come, and how the pressure can sometimes get to a player. But the fall off was amazing, and the feedback from the nation is just equally amazing. And you know, there's folks still in Akron who believe in him and trust in him, and hope that he rebounds.
Even non-sports fans paying attention to the drama and all this?
Right. I was covering Akron City Council on Monday night, and Marco Somerville, the president of council, was very upset about a move that Governor Kasich had made that day, where he made the Dallas team honorary Ohioans, you know, passed a resolution on that. And Marco was very upset. You know, he has said all along, in fact, Akron City Council passed a resolution supporting LeBron after he made his very controversial decision, especially in the way that he made it, to go to Miami. But Marco said, look, you know, he left the Cavaliers, he left Cleveland, but he never left Akron. And he went through a long list of things that LeBron has done to help Akron, even since he's been in Miami. And so, you know, that's that, you know, move by Kasich really angered, you know, some people. And there were people at the council meeting who, you know, were clapping and agreeing with that as well. And so I do think that, you know, there's people here locally that still see him as a, you know, a local boy who has done well, and they are not wishing him ill. Although I have to admit that I'm among, you know, a group of people that just felt like he can win a championship, but I didn't really want him to win it this year.
Didn't want him to win it that first year. So is Akron the perfect place for him to come back to, and you know, after he takes a little bit of a vacation, and kind of isolate himself a little bit to go through the things that you mentioned?
That, you know, this might be his comfort spot is here, because as Stephanie pointed out, he's, you know, obviously well loved. You know, look at it. The guy still does his bike-a-thon here. He still donates money and food, and he's, you know, visits St. V's, and he does all sorts of things still for the community. So there's a reason to still like the guy here. You know, the sports fan in you, you know, regrets and resents the way that he handled, but the guy made a business decision. He just, you know, he opted to go work somewhere else. And, you know, sports fans in Cleveland will never get over it. They just have a tendency to hang on to things. He will always be booed when he plays at the Q. But I think in Akron, he has a great deal of support, and just, you know, and rightfully so, because he does. I mean, the guy is still a very big part of the community in terms of his charity work here, and that will always continue. And the fact is, you know, Kasich was, you know, basically taking a cheap shot at the guy. And you got to remember, LeBron's an Ohio guy. He still lives here. He could have moved his family down to South Beach, but he didn't. His family's still here. They still pay taxes here. And for Kasich to come out and do that was just, you know, piling on and just, you know, not very statesmanlike. Yeah,
my wife says, you know, we've got thousands of computers in the Akron schools thanks to LeBron James.
Absolutely.
You know, how do you relish in, you know, his demise? I think we're all so used to, even when he was playing for the Cavs during the season, but in the offseason, we were used to seeing LeBron in his car driving around in Montrose. It's not unusual for you to run into him at Lowe's or at the Wellness Center or something like that. And I just wonder, going into this offseason, if this will be the time that Akron comes to LeBron's aid, as much as he's tried to say, I've done this all for you, as he said during the LeBron James Appreciation Day. Everything I do is for Akron. Is it this summer, it won't be Akron trying to, you know, wrap their arms around LeBron a little bit? I
don't think LeBron is the type of guy who is embracing this villain role that the national media and Cleveland media have put on him. I think LeBron likes to be liked, and he finds that sort of comfort and love in Akron. And he's got to come to grips to, and he obviously I think needs some better public relations advice too, because he's doing a lot of things wrong in the last year, and particularly this comments about, or his haters going back to their, mundane lives again after the, the Heat lost. So
Kasich takes a shot at him.
Yeah.
Dan Gilbert sends out a tweet while Dallas is still on the floor celebrating.
Right.
What do we make of the personality still involved here? Because that's our local owner, Dan Gilbert.
Right. Well, they're speaking to the fans, the lowest common denominator sometimes. And, look, we all were rooting against the Heat. It's just that you're a sports fan. You feel jilted. You're going to do that. But, at some point, too, I think that, people are going to start feeling sorry for LeBron, because he is getting beat up so badly everywhere he turns. And, again, no one has been more scrutinized than that guy. So
who needs to come to his aid at this point? You said the psychologists, or the basketball players, but you mentioned you knew he was going to win one, but you didn't want it to be this first year. Now that he lost this first year, do people get behind him to say it's time for him to win one?
Maybe now people can move on, although there will always be some people, Dan Gilbert probably included. My brother is a huge, huge Cavs fan. He threw away all of his LeBron stuff. He's not going to get over it anytime soon. But I think that there are other people, myself included, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for Phil. Who knows what Phil's thinking? But that can say, okay, let's see the guy do well now. He is from this area. He's done a lot, like we have been talking about, for this area, and let's see him, fulfill what he went down there to do.
And Phil, we have less than a minute left, but we can't get away from the comment that he made in the post game when asked about, what do you say to these people, who've hated you, and he made the comment about, well, they still have their problems, and I still have my great life.
Yeah,
are we scrutinizing these comments too closely?
No, I think it came out the way it came out, and a great many people were offended by that. And it's funny, the next day he came back out and clarified it and said, his comments that he made, were misinterpreted, and he obviously didn't mean that. But the fact is, the guy, we sometimes, compared to LeBron, we do have mundane lives, and he does have a lot of money. He does have a lot of money, and he's probably right.
The loss gives us a whole other year to talk about where it's going and to follow it all out. Phil, Stephanie, and Ed, thank you so much, and thanks for being with us. Again, you can watch all of it on NewsNite.net. Good night.